why you should play 1e4. Hello everyone, I'm Grandmaster Max Slingworth, and in this video, I will share with you the top 7 reasons why you should play 1e4 in your white chess games. Now, before I get into these 7 reasons, do remember that when you like this video, it really helps support the YouTube algorithm. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you're new, then hit the subscribe button and ding ding that notification bell to get all my Grandmaster Chess videos in your YouTube feed. Now let's get into the reasons why you should play 1e4. The first reason is that e4 is simply the best move for white, at least according to one of the greatest chess players of all time, Bobby Fischer. Guessing you've probably never heard of Bobby Fischer. He was just, reached a FIDE rating of 2785 and won a world championship match in 1972 against Boris Spassky. But on a more serious note, he said that e4 is simply best by test. It's a move he relied on throughout his playing career. And I will get into some of the reasons why e4 is the best move and some of the subsequent reasons why you should play e4. But it's the most popular move, and it is with good reason that it's the most popular, in fact, at virtually all levels of play. The second reason why you should play 1e4 is that it is the most aggressive first move. Because if you compare e4 with a move like d4, of course d4 is a perfectly good move as well, also played by a lot of very good players. But when you play d4, it's not as aggressive. You're not putting as much pressure on the opponent from the outset when you're just building up a solid center with moves like c4, knight c3 and e4. And certainly some system opening like the London system, while again there is nothing terribly wrong with it. At the same time, it's not a system where you're exactly putting a lot of pawn pressure or piece pressure on the opponent quite early. In contrast, if we compare this with e4, we can see that after the most common reply at a higher level and at a beginner level of 1e5, that already in the main line with knight f3, we're already attacking this pawn with tempo. Knight c6, bishop to b5 if we take the Roy Lopez. Of course, this is far from the only way to play 1e4, but you can already see that in this line that we're already putting a lot of pressure on black's position. We already have ideas, maybe not immediately, but at some point to take on c6 and to potentially take that pawn on e5. And in a lot of the lines, black has to make some little concessions and give us a little initiative in order to avoid the potential problem of his e5 pawn simply being chopped off the board like an unwanted piece of wood or an unwanted tree. In any case, that's the second reason why I should play e4. It's the most aggressive first move. And the next reason is kind of a continuation of this point, that 1e4 is just very easy to learn and very easy to understand, because with e4, you have the very clear point that your bishop and queen have a lot of mobility. Again, if you compare this with other first moves such as d4, you can see that by contrast, the white queen has a lot less mobility, and certainly moves like knight f3 don't really help you directly to activate your bishops from the very outset, or to activate your queen from the very outset. But let's say if we were to take a line such as the Sicilian, for example, with c5. Well, in this case, if we're playing the main line as an example with knight f3 and then d4, it's very easy to understand why we're playing the move d4, because you're putting the pawns side by side in the center. And when you trade the pawns, your knight is getting to a better square. You get a nice lead in development, and it's very easy for you to place your bishops on quite active squares. Of course, there are a lot of ways to play such a position, but this is just to demonstrate that when you play e4, you generally know what you're kind of going for, what you're trying to achieve, that you're trying to get a lead in development. Often you're trying to open up the position. For example, in the Roy Lopez, a very common theme is that you're going for a d4 break in the middle game, where you just try to trade off that e5 pawn and just completely dominate the center. In fact, if we take the move d4, the Scotch game, as an example, again we see the idea is a very clear cut for white, that we've managed to trade off the opponent's central pawn, and therefore we have a space advantage in the center, which, if we can complete our development, will give us a fairly nice advantage here, if we can keep that pawn on e4. So again, easy to learn, and because the ideas are very straightforward, which makes it very easy to understand. As for the fourth reason why you should play e4, it gives you active and fast development, and I already kind of showed a couple of examples of that, but even if, let's say, we take a different variation such as the French even in these lines where black tries to close the position, you still get relatively easy development. I mean, it's very easy to play a move like knight to c3, and if knight f6, there are moves like bishop g5, where we see that we're putting a lot of pressure on the opponent's position early, which fits with reason 2 about e4 being the most aggressive first move. It gets your pieces nice and active. And also you get this very active and fast development, whereas in other positions with d4 or with the flank openings where you don't play 1e4 or 1d4, your pieces just don't have the same energy or the same activity as such. I mean, also if e4 or even some fun lines like different gambits that can be played as well to give you very active and fast development. One example would be something like the Mauro Gambit, which of course is not the main line against the Sicilian defense, but it's a good example of how e4, when played very aggressively, can just give you this very active piece play and very fast development and quite easy attacking plans to follow. Which actually again leads us to kind of reason number 5 of why you should play e4, which is a kind of continuation of some of the other reasons once again. And that is that it is easy to play even for beginners. Because I know a lot of you watching this may be somewhat inexperienced in chess. Maybe you haven't read a lot of chess books. Maybe you haven't watched a lot of chess videos as such. Or maybe you only have watched videos on YouTube every now and then about chess. So if we take e5, a common opening that's recommended a lot at the beginner level, which is actually good at all levels of play, is the Italian game. And a lot of you can probably relate to the Italian maybe being the first opening that you actually ever learned in chess. Maybe you learned some very simple setup, such as playing d3, knight f6, knight to c3, and, just putting the knights all in the center and playing this very symmetrical type position, or maybe castles, h3, and trying different ideas. Because obviously there are a lot of plans that white can go for. It might be Gioco pianissimo, but it doesn't mean that the players are going to fall asleep just yet. But of course, it is true that the move of 1e4 is also very flexible, and that's sort of a kind of bonus reason why you should play e4. Because let's say if you want to play bishop c4 more aggressively, well, there are gambit start systems like the Evans Gambit with b4, where you give up a pawn, but you end up gaining a tempo on the bishop, and you end up going d4 and getting a really nice center. And if they take, you kind of open the center and get a really nice lead and development to work with. So very aggressive, even gambit style ways to play it. And of course, there's a d3 approach, the modern Italian, where you just build that solid structure and try to keep the structure more flexible and kind of go for more maneuvering position, maybe somewhat in the spirit of the Roy Lopez, but where the bishop is on c4 instead of b5. And then there are other direct systems, such as going c3 and d4, and just hitting that bishop and immediately going for the attack. For example, ed4 and e5 is something that I have analyzed quite a lot in the past in some of my previous works, where this is a system that if your opponent is not a very good defender and they don't know exactly the move to play, they can just end up in a very bad position right out of the opening. Whereas when you play 1d4, it usually takes more than one mistake from the opponent in order to be able to get a big advantage. But in a lot of the lines with 1e4, which you're going to learn a bit more about in this video, there are certain variations you can play quite directly, play quite in a dynamic and a tactical way. And if they don't find exactly the right moves, which often a lot of your opponents, let's say below 1800, won't know and won't find over the board, then you might just get a really fantastic position and even be close to winning out of the opening. In fact, I kind of remember even when I was a professional chess player that whenever I played 1e4 against someone below 2400, I almost always seemed to get an advantage out of the opening almost every time I played it. And there's only a lot of reasons for that, but one was just that it puts a lot of pressure on the opponent. I think that your opponent's probably more likely to make a mistake against 1e4 than against almost any of the other first moves, at least in terms of making a mistake that really costs them and leaves them facing a very strong attack and initiative early in the game. Now, the sixth reason why you should play 1e4 is that pretty much every world champion, there may be a couple of exceptions, but almost every world chess champion actually started their playing career playing the move 1e4 as a kid. And it makes sense because e4 just teaches you so much about the basics of chess. It teaches you the importance of getting your pieces developed quickly, of getting your king to safety early with castling typically. It teaches you the importance of how to not just develop your pieces and get into the game like you might see with a lot of 1d4 openings, but it shows you how to develop and at the same time fight for control of the game. It's often a very underestimated opening principle, and we've actually seen it in play in a few examples here. about how the opening is not just about playing just to develop your pieces, but it's about trying to fight for the initiative and take control of the game as well. To give you an example, if we take a move like d5, for example, the move like d5, the Scandinavian might seem like black is taking the initiative by attacking our pawn, but what we learn is that the queen is developed a bit early, and by kicking it with knight c3 and just gaining time with our development, we are able to take an early initiative, and sometimes you can even play other ideas where we're able to keep harassing the queen. That's a good example of how if black makes one slightly inaccurate move, that can allow us to take control of the game and make our opponents feel a little bit uncomfortable, make them sweat in their boots, as it were. So, almost every world champion started with 1e4. Of course, a lot of world champions also played d4, but e4 is kind of the commonality that brings them all together, that they started playing 1e4 and it just meant they improved a lot faster due to getting the hang of e4 early rather than leaving it until, they're in their 40s or whatever. In any case, there is also a seventh reason why you should play 1e4, and it is something which is a special opportunity that perhaps I could have teased it to you at the start, but maybe if I'd said special opportunity at the start, you would have been so busy thinking about that, you would have forgot all of the 6 reasons I mentioned before that. So to recap, the first 6 reasons why I should play e4 is that it is simply the best move. It's the most aggressive first move. It's easy to learn and understand. It's also giving you active and fast development. It's easy to play even for beginners. Almost every world champion started with e4. Bonus reason, it's flexible and allows you to take control of the game if the opponent makes a small mistake. And the 7th big reason is that you can actually now master e4 easier than ever before. I remember when I started learning e4, it was much harder for me than for most other junior players because I was mostly a d4 player for the first 5 or 6 years of my chess playing career, as it were. And I remember when I started learning 1e4, it was really difficult for me because I would look at the different books that were out there. There are various opening repertoire books on how to play e4 as white. But when I would go through them, I still would feel like I didn't really feel comfortable in the positions. I still felt like I didn't really understand them. And one reason was that I was trying to learn a lot of very mainline systems. If we go back to the open Sicilian, just to give you an example, like after d4, take, in this position you have to be ready for the knight off, which is a very big branch of opening theory in itself. There are a lot of lines black can play even within the knight off, whether they go e6 or e5 or even g6, and there are a lot of deviations and variations within that one should know against the knight off, depending also on what you play. But then there's also things like the classical that you have to know. You have to know what to do against a dragon. You also have to have something ready against the Scheveningen with e6. And that's just if they play d6. There's also all the open Sicilian lines where they go knight c6, where they go e6. And so there's just so much to learn, and I have to admit it took me well over 1,000 hours to finally get the hang of the open Sicilian as white. And I know that most of you don't want to spend, several hours a day going through loads and loads of opening theory because, well, you have better things to do with your time, alright? So that's why I've created something really special for you. I've created a course for you that allows you to master 1e4 in less than 10 hours rather than the well over 1,000 hours that it took me. And it's called Play e4 Like Hikaru. It's funny, actually here I had my other course that I'm launching at this time showed, but now we have the right one. So why have I based my e4 white repertoire around Hikaru Nakamura? The reason is that Hikaru, and I'm sure a lot of you recognize him because he has well over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and I lost count number of followers on Twitch. Maybe over 1 million on Twitch as well, actually. One of the biggest streamers, just period, in the world. Like, not just biggest chess streamer, but just biggest streamer. One of the biggest. So, basically, a lot of you know of him already. You've seen some of his games, and you've probably noticed how he's very good at playing these openings that are just a little bit different, but still make his opponents very uncomfortable, that allow him to execute very easy and straightforward plans so that you can get a time advantage on the clock, and if the opponent doesn't find the right moves, they just get into a bad position. I've seen it happen so many times in Nakamura's games, and I've actually deeply studied his openings to really figure out what are the very best lines in his repertoire, in his main repertoire of 1e4 in Blitz, that allow him to get these amazing results like 80% or well above 80% score against some of the other top grandmasters in the world in online Blitz. And so what I've done is I've broken down his repertoire, and I actually go through how to play each of his sort of pet systems with one e4 based on playing it in the following way, as I just return to the board, with e4 followed by knight c3 against absolutely everything. Because when I tried to learn systems like the Scotch and the Roy Le Pez White, or when I tried to learn Open Sicilian, there was just so much theory and so much I had to memorize to really get the hang of the positions. And then even if I memorized it, I still didn't really understand what was going on because the positions are very complex. So Nakamura's solution is he just plays very simple and very direct systems. For example, after e5, he goes knight c3. So already you're avoiding a whole lot of theory with knight f3 that your opponents are going to know a lot better. Already knight c3 is a move. Based on my experience playing Hikaru's repertoire in hundreds of online Blitz games, I've found that most of my opponents, nearly all my opponents below 2200 actually just have no real idea what to do against this repertoire. And they just often end up in a very bad position quite quickly. So I have actually tested his lines myself to confirm that they're going to be easy for you to understand and easy for you to play in your own games and to really have much better results in your games than maybe what you have with your current systems. Because even if you're already a 1e4 player, the thing is, there are probably some systems that they can play that you maybe are not very comfortable with, or where you might not have a real system against even, right? Well, before he gets that, with knight c3, I actually present two different ways to play Hikaru's repertoire in a few different cases with play e4 like Hikaru. My main recommendation is to go bishop c4 and play this Vienna with the bishop on c4. And the point of this, and kind of the advantage of not playing knight f3 early in a lot of our lines, is that we get the option to go f4 in a lot of positions. Not necessarily immediately, but with some preparation. And that allows us to attack that pawn on e5. We get this really nice pawn center with the pawns side by side. And with the pawn chain pointing toward the king side, that often gives us very good chances for a king side attack in the opening and well into the middle game. Because after all, they play e5, they're likely to castle short, right? Because if they don't, why do they play one e5? But if you want to play something that's maybe a bit less strategic, where if that's a bit too slow of a build-up for you, I also show an alternative approach that Nakamura has also played. Not as much as bishop c4, but he has played the move f4, the Vienna Gambit, in many games as well. I'll show you how to play this, and in fact, this is a position where when I did some research, when I checked the League Chess Opening Explorer to see what club players and online players like you mostly play against the repertoire, most players below 1800 actually don't find the right move for black here. They play a weaker move, for example, a move like ef4, e5, which would give white just a king's gambit with 2 full extra tempi, and just allow white to get a big advantage almost just out of the opening right at this point. So these are really dangerous weapons, and it's kind of taking the reasons I mentioned before for why you should play e4, and it's really optimizing them so that it's as easy as possible for you to learn and understand this repertoire by giving you very straightforward ideas championed by Nakamura himself in his Blitz games on chess.com. Of course, Nakamura being the very best player on chess.com with Blitz rating records of well over 300. I think his Blitz rating record might be 3-2, if I remember correctly. Somewhere around this range. It might be higher by the time you watch this video, because obviously it's very, very high rating. Returning to the chess, I also want to share with you that against c5. Again, I'm not recommending Open Sicilian, because if I recommend Open Sicilian, the Open Sicilian section would be longer than this whole course combined. But I'm recommending a shortcut that Nakamura plays with really great results, and that is the Grand Prix attack. And the nice thing about the Grand Prix attack is that it's a system. A lot of these lines are very systematic, where you can play like knight f3, bishop c4, castles, d3, queen e1, and just go for a big attack against black's king. Especially in the main lines where they play g6, you often get a very nice kingside attack with the plan I've showed, which of course I go much deeper into in the play e4 like Hikaru course. But there's also, again, I present an alternative approach. In this position, I show you how to play the bishop c4 plan. I just, arrow spammed all over the place. But I also show you the positional approach with bishop to b5, which might actually be the better plan in this particular position, objectively speaking. But I give you the choice between whether you want to play, just go for a very direct attack on the king, or if you want to go for the strategic plan of doubling their pawns, making their structure very inflexible. And if you know the right strategic plan to follow after you double their pawns, you can actually get an almost winning position out of the opening against pretty much anybody below 2,200. I have checked this and I saw that nearly all players below this rating just walk into white's strategic idea and don't really find a way to avoid it, and you just get a completely dominant strategic bind, just tying up their pawns and just completely leaving their bishops looking kind of silly, wondering, why did I sign up for this game? So that's again showing that this is not just play one thing against absolutely everything. I showed a system, but I'm showing you a couple of different ways in which you can play it, so that you can find the one that suits you, whether you're a more tactical attacking player, or if you're a more strategic positional kind of player. Now, also I do show you how to deal with all of the other systems as well that black can play. This is, after all, a complete opening repertoire for white. So I show you how to deal with the French, playing knight c3. I show you how to deal with the Caro-Kann, and I show you how to deal with all the different sidelines like d6, g6, knight f6, d5, and some rare first moves that I don't want to give the time of day to in this particular video. But in any case, you can see now that with just 9 hours of video content, at least that's what is planned at the moment, maybe I'll even over-deliver for you guys. Well, in just those 9 hours, you'll be able to really master all of the lines, and I've also made it really easy. I've included a basic ideas section. Actually, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek inside the course here. If I just go to Google Chrome, you can see the Play E4 Like Hikaru course. Play E4 using the most dangerous ideas Hikaru and Nakamura used to become the world's best online blitz player. So you can see I have an introduction, kind of a little bit like what I've shared here about the structure of the course, the overall philosophy of the openings that we're playing, and also some inspirational games showing how Nakamura actually beat another one of the world's best online blitz players, GM Daniel Naroditsky, in just 12 moves, and actually how he beat him in 12 moves twice in online blitz. And okay, some of you may also know of Naroditsky because he's a very popular chess YouTuber and Twitch streamer as well, so perhaps some of his names will bring back some pleasant memories. But you can see if we take, for example, the Sicilian Grand Prix attack with knight c6, as you see, I've divided each major branch of the repertoire, each major variation, into its own section. You can see I have a basic ideas section that just allows you to really see what the main moves are that black can play, what the main ideas are, what sort of plans you're typically going for. And then to help you to really execute them successfully, I present various model games. I actually have, at the time of this recording, I have 35 games in the course, but if anything, it may even be a greater number if I come up with some even better games to show, but let's say 35 at a minimum. Well, you can see here that this is Nakamura's games against a lot of quite strong plays in online blitz, and the reason I've picked out blitz games to show you the key ideas is because if I showed you a classical Grandmaster game instead, that has a lot of subtleties, a lot of deep points to it, and it would take a long time to really explain away where it would all make sense to you. But the thing with blitz is very fast. There's not a lot of time to think, which means that these guys, even though they're some of the best blitz players in the world playing against Nakamura in a lot of these cases, they do make some mistakes, and a lot of these mistakes are also the same mistakes that your opponents, rated below 2,000 or below 1,600 are going to make in their games against you when you play Hikaru's opening repertoire with 1e4 against them. So you can see here the different sections. We have Grand Prix attack, we have the Vienna game, we have French, Caro-Kann. You can see the different lines I recommend in it. You can see that the way in which I'm recommending is I'm not necessarily suggesting the absolute main line, but suggesting the lines that have given Nakamura the best results. You see, Nakamura has played 1e4 in nearly 7,000 games. Probably by the time you watch this video, he'll have played in over 7,000 games with white. But in any case, we can see that, well, we can take that experience, his extensive experience playing 1e4, and just pick out the very best lines learning from his experience, rather than, me as a teenager figuring it all out for myself, trying to piece together things from this book and that video and that source. I've just done it all for it to make it very easy for you to start playing and to start winning with 1e4. And to have a lot of fun at the same time. You're really going to enjoy seeing how it is that Nakamura plays differently to all the other blitz players to sort of assert his dominance and to just outplay his opponents. And you'll see that the ideas he uses aren't exactly like sort of 300 IQ plays. They're just very simple plans, very clear attacking schemes, but there's something a little bit different to what his opponents are familiar with, and he just executes them very well from having played them in just so many games. And, well, we're getting to see those games to see how we can do it for ourselves. And a few bonuses, because I know you guys love bonuses, and, well, you definitely deserve a reward for going through the course. So what I do is basically, for each section, once you go through the basic ideas, it will unlock the next section. And by kind of unlocking the different levels, kind of like a video game, it'll make it much more likely that you complete the course compared to all those other courses that you bought that you maybe bought and never finished, or maybe you never even started them. They're just sort of, well, I guess, gathering virtual like e-dust on your course library or whatever. But this, because it's unlocked one section at a time, it gives you that incentive to go, okay, let's unlock the next section. Let's unlock the next section. And then when you've unlocked all the sections, you get me actually playing the repertoire, me actually explaining the ideas, so you can clearly understand, okay, this is how a grandmaster thinks about the same kind of positions that I'm getting in my games. And of course, I give you PGN files as well, which you can easily replay the ideas and the moves I showed you in the course. You can also download it and sort of use it however you please from there. Obviously, don't just share it with the world. That is, of course, against copyright, but obviously for your own personal use, you have full leeway in that regard once you have invested in this play e4 like Hikaru. I just realized you might notice the image I have here is slightly different. I have the Hikaru bot rather than the real life image of Hikaru. In any case, going back here though, you can see with the PGN files that's just going to give you make it very easy for you to master the variations and to really remember the games and remember the key ideas. So that way you'll be able to revise it until those moves, those plans, and those ideas just become second nature to you. So that's basically my course, and the way I've done it, I think you'll agree that even if you go away from this video and just start playing 1e4 right away, I've given you some clear ideas and you have a definitely clear idea of what it takes to be able to play e4 successfully. But to make that next step, to really take some of Nick Nakamura's magic and to have some of that rub off on your own game, to be able to make your opponents very uncomfortable, to get them out of their comfort zone into their favorite Sicilian or favorite line of the Royal Lepez or favorite Scandinavian Alekan, whatever they like to play. Instead, we take them onto our territory where Nakamura has proven that these lines are extremely difficult for players to deal with, whether they're a club player or top grandmaster or online player, anywhere in between. They really find it very difficult to deal with the simple yet very effective attacking plans that we show in this repertoire. And with that being said, just really excited to have you in this course. Do keep in mind I do have a special that's for the first week of November only, so do make sure to get in for that. I don't want you to miss out and then say, oh, why didn't I get this course when it was cheaper? So that's my special opportunity for you. Okay, that's about all for me from this video. Really excited to see you guys in the course, and okay, I should mention as well that this is a no-risk investment for you. If you decide within 7 days of purchase that you're just not happy with the course, you're not satisfied, you can just let me know within those 7 days and I'll just give you a full refund, no questions asked. I'm taking the risk because I know this stuff really works, that it's a very powerful, a very effective repertoire. I know this because not just from studying Nakamura's games extensively, but also from playing it myself and just seeing for myself how easy it is to beat these players below 200 when you play these same lines that Nakamura does and when you have gone through his game so you know the plans and the way to follow up from that good opening to basically take home the point in the middle game. So that's all from me. Do let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, because I am planning to share more content on 1e4 for white to really help you to kind of master e4. And of course, if you invest in this this course, then of course I'll give you much faster results and much better results with 1e4. At the same time, I like to keep you guys in the loop and to share a bit more about e4 because I'm just so passionate about it. I really believe that if you're a beginner watching this and you're not sure which first move to play, or if you are, let's say, maybe thinking, well, I've been playing d4, but I seem to be stuck in this plateau and not really improving much, then I really have a feeling that playing 1e4 and really learning how to attack and take control of the game again is going to completely change the way in which you set problems to the opponent. I'll just make your results much, much better, because instead of just playing to develop, you'll be playing to take control of the game and to punish the opponent's mistakes the way that Nakamura does. I think that's everything. So yeah, comment below if you have any questions for me. Maybe I can cover them in some later videos, if not directly in the comments to you. And I will see you guys in the next video. Get out of here.